Hey there, how's it going? Welcome to another video. In this one we're going to be talking about how we can deploy Komiser using Terraform and Ansible. If you've already dabbled in Komiser and you want to take the next step and use it at a wider scale across your organization, it goes without saying that you're going to want to put it inside of some sort of infrastructure as code process that you already have existing. So hopefully with this video you'll see that deploying it with Terraform is really easy, and in no time you can have a production ready deployment of Komiser. So let's get started. The first thing that I would recommend for you to do is to head over to the Telwarden blog, where you'll find this blog post, which is called Deploy Komiser to AWS with Terraform. So here you're going to get all the information that you're going to need, plus a link to the repository where you have all of the code ready to go. And here in the diagram you can see that we're going to deploy inside of a VPC an EC2 instance. We're going to install everything that we need to deploy Komiser onto the EC2 instance. We're also going to provision an IAM role, a classic load balancer, and we're also going to create a Route 53 domain name so we can access Komiser. As I said, all the code is in the repository, which you can get right here. There's only a few sections where you're going to have to add your custom data, but we'll look at that now in a second. Okay, so having said that, let's go ahead with the first step. Oh, and speaking of steps, let me just touch on the steps that we're going to go through to deploy from start to finish. First of all, we're going to clone the repository so we can get all the code. Then we'll have a look at the different service files and the different Terraform files that we're going to provision. We'll add our variables to the variables.tf file, and we will plan and apply our Terraform files. Once that's done and we have our AWS resources provisioned, we'll then run an Ansible playbook. And that Ansible playbook is going to import the config file and the Docker Compose file that we're going to need. And once that's done, we can grab the domain name that we've created and see if our deployment of Komiser is reachable. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so here in my terminal, I'm SSHing to an EC2 instance, which I'm going to be using as a client. And as you can see, I've already cloned the Komiser Terraform repository, which you can see right here. So let's have a quick look at the different resource files that we have here. So the first one is the EC2 Terraform file. So here in the first section, we're grabbing the latest AMI ID so we can later use it right here. We're going to provide a series of variables to add the instance type and then the key pairs that we're going to need to be able to SSH to the instance. We're going to add the VPC security group IDs and the IAM instance profile, which is going to give us the temporary credentials we need. Additionally, we're going to load our user data. This is a script that's going to install Docker Compose and Docker, so we have it on the machine. And just below here we have the security group, which is allowing traffic in on port 22, which is SSH. And we're also adding some tags. And quickly moving on, we're going to have a look at the elb.tf file, where we can see that we are first provisioning an AWS security group that's going to allow traffic on port 80, which is HTTP, and on port 443, which is HTTPS, and allowing egress out. And here we can see the classic load balancer resource being provisioned. So we're adding these listeners and these health checks, as well as the tags. So let's have a quick look at the IAM instance profile. So here we can see that we're creating 3 resources. The first is the IAM policy, and we're loading the policy that we have in the policy.json, which is also in the directory. We're creating the IAM role, and then we're creating the attachment resource, which is going to attach the policy and the role. Additionally, we're going to create the Route 53 resource, and here inside you can change the name of your record. Mine is going to start with Jake-TF. Let's have a quick look at the Terraform.tf file before we look at the variables. So in the Terraform.tf file, this is where we configure our backend. In my case, I'm using an S3 bucket, which is called Jake-TF backend. The key is Komiser, and the default region is EU Central 1. Okay, so let's have a look at the variables. So these are the variables that we're going to need. I've added the region. In the instance type, we recommend using a T2 medium for Komiser. Here I'm adding the name of the SSH key pair that I'm going to use to be able to establish an SSH connection to the Komiser instance. I'm adding the name of the owner. I'm also adding the private key path. So this is the private key on the provisioning machine. Here's where you add the ARN for the ACM certificate that's going to be attached to the Elastic Load Balancer. I'm adding the subnets that I would like Komiser to be deployed in. I'm also adding the name of the domain and the ID to the hosted zone that the domain belongs to. Let's just have a quick look at the scripts. As you saw in the ec2.tf file, we're loading the install.sh file to download Docker and to download Docker Compose onto the machine, which we can see here. And as you can see, we're doing a yum update, installing Docker, and then enabling Docker and making sure that it's started. So at this point, we don't really need the config.toml file or the Docker Compose file. We'll do that later with Ansible. So let's go ahead and run a Terraform plan. So as you can see, the plan run, and we have 9 AWS resources that are going to be provisioned, and the output is going to be this address that we're going to use to access our Komiser deployment. Cool, so let's apply it. Okay, and there we have it. It took it around 2 minutes to provision everything. So the resources have been added. We also have the output. But if we were to go and try to hit this address now, of course, nothing would come up because we didn't actually deploy Komiser just yet. We're going to do that with Ansible. So let's have a look at the playbook that we're going to use. So in the playbook, we have 4 tasks. To be honest, we could have done it in less tasks, but I just wanted it to be clear. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to upload the config.toml file. And the second thing is to upload the Komiser compose file. The third task is to make sure that the Docker daemon on the Komiser instance is running. So speaking of Docker Compose, let's go over and check out the Docker Compose file. So as you can see here, we're using the latest image version of Komiser, which is 3.0.15. We are mounting a volume that passes in the config.toml file, and then we're using the config flag to show the Komiser executable where the configuration file is. Okay, let's have a quick look at the config file itself. And this is it here, pretty simple. We are giving it a name, in my case, Jake Terraform demo, and we're passing in the environment variables source. So since we've attached the IAM instance profile to the Komiser instance, we're going to be able to get temporary credentials that have the required Komiser policy connected to it. So we don't need to add any other credentials. We're simply going to pick it up by adding this source environment variables line here. And that's pretty much it for the config file. So when we run the playbook, we're going to pass in the connection credentials for this new instance that we've created. And we're going to pass that in through the inventory file, which is right here. We're going to be using the Ansible user, which is ec2-user. And I've already added the path to the secret key. But the thing that we're missing is the IP. We need to add the IP of the newly provisioned EC2 instance. So let's go over and get it. This is the running EC2 instance that we just previously provisioned with Terraform. So let's just open it and grab the public IP because this is what we are going to need. And I'm going to add it to the inventory file. Cool, so I've saved that. So now we can run our Ansible playbook. And I'm going to do so by running Ansible-playbook. And I'm just going to enter the passphrase. And there we go, it ran successfully. So now if I pass in the previously outputted address, I'm more than likely going to get a positive result. So let's check it out. Cool, and there we go. We can hit the address at jake-tf.komiser.io and we can see Komiser up and running here. We can check out the inventory page and this is the expected result. I can see all of my resources right here. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully you'll be able to download the files and get this done easily yourself. If you have any issues, always feel free to reach out to us on the Tailwarden Discord server. We'll be happy to help. Hope this was informative. See you in the next one. Bye.